So, this is where we start. The raw beginning of a case that's haunted me for years. It's the introduction to something that feels too strange to be real, but here we are. Picture a quiet morning in Coronado, California, back on July 13th, 2011. The sun's just creeping up over the water, casting long shadows on this sprawling waterfront property at 1043 Ocean Boulevard. They call it the Speckles Mansion sometimes. Old money vibes, multiple buildings, the kind of place where secrets could hide easy. Around 6:48 that morning, a 911 call comes in. It's frantic. The voice on the line reporting a woman hanging at that address. The caller, Adam Shacknai, he's the one who finds her. Rebecca Zahau, 32 years old, dangling from the exterior second-story balcony. She's nude, a rope tight around her neck, her hands bound behind her back, feet tied together. Adam cuts her down, tries whatever he can, but it's too late. She's declared dead right there on the scene. Now, let that sink in. A woman hanging like that, exposed, restrained. It doesn't scream accident, does it? The bindings weren't loose knots. They were deliberate, wrists crossed and looped with rope, ankles the same. And there's more. Part of a t-shirt stuffed in her mouth, like a gag. Residue on her skin that looks like tape had been there, maybe holding something in place. Bruising on her head, spots of blood here and there, localized, not spread out. The balcony itself, overlooking the grounds, rope anchored to a bed frame inside, I hear. And get this, a message painted in black on a nearby door. Words that don't make much sense at first glance. The whole setup was high visibility from the start, controversial as hell. Adam's there, dealing with this nightmare, while the household's already reeling from something else, but that's not for now. You know how these things go. Look straightforward in the light of day, but the shadows tell a different story. Officials arrive, take in the scene, the nudity, the ligature, those bindings that scream foul play to anyone with eyes. Rebecca's body on the ground, cut free, but the questions piling up fast. Why the gag? The tape marks? The bruises that don't add up easy? It's the kind of discovery that sticks with you, makes you wonder what really went down in that mansion. Next, we'll pull back to look at the world around this estate. The people, the pressures, everything that led up to that morning. You heard how it started. That frantic morning, the body on the balcony, the brother cutting her down. But to get why any of this hits so hard, we need to step back inside that place. The Speckles Mansion, sitting there at 1043 Ocean Boulevard in Coronado, California. It's not just some house, it's a whole compound, multiple buildings hugging the waterfront. The kind of spot that whispers money and old secrets. Waves lapping at the edge, palm trees swaying in the breeze. But inside, it's a different story. Jonah Shacknai owned it all. Big-time pharmaceutical executive, the sort who builds empires out of pills and deals. He'd turned this mansion into his world, a mix of luxury and whatever chaos comes with it. Living there part-time was Rebecca Zahau, his girlfriend, or partner, depending on who you ask. She floated in and out, part of the household rhythm, keeping things steady amid the swirl. Then there's Maxfield, Shacknai, or Max as they called him, Jonah's 6-year-old son. A kid full of energy, running around that massive property like it was his playground. But things weren't simple. Adam Shacknai, Jonah's brother, was in the mix too, part of the family orbit, showing up when needed. The household wasn't just these folks. Other family members milled about, helpers, the usual crowd in a place like that. It all felt layered, you know? Relationships tangled like old wires. And hanging over everything was this shadow, a medical emergency with Max. The boy had taken a catastrophic fall right there on the property. Suddenly, the mansion turned into a hub of worry, everyone rallying around this pediatric crisis. Doctors coming and going, family huddling in quiet rooms, the air thick with that hospital waiting smell, even at home. Jonah trying to hold it together as the exec and the dad. Rebecca stepping up, keeping the pieces from falling apart. Adam, there for support, or whatever role brothers play in times like these. You know how these things go. Families look solid from the outside, but up close, the cracks start showing. This was the world inside those walls, tense and fragile, right before everything shattered. Next, we'll trace those critical days leading up to that morning, piecing together who was where and what they were doing in the hours before. So, we've got this web of relationships hanging over the Speckles Mansion, all tangled up in unspoken resentments. Now, let's narrow it down to those pivotal hours that set the stage for what came next. It starts on July 11th, 2011. That's the day Maxfield Max Shacknai takes a catastrophic fall inside the mansion. Someone dials 911, and paramedics rush him to Sharp Coronado Hospital. But his injuries are too severe for them to handle, so they transfer him straight to Radi Children's Hospital. This isn't just some kid tumbling down the stairs. It's bad. The kind of fall that echoes through everyone's theories about motive later on. You know how these things go. One slip, and suddenly everyone's looking for someone to blame. The mansion feels a little emptier that night, with the weight of what happened pressing down. Then comes July 12th. Rebecca Zahau starts her day by dropping off her sister Zena at the airport. Zena's heading back home, leaving Rebecca to navigate the fallout alone. Later that same day, Rebecca reportedly picks up Adam Shacknai from somewhere, Jonah's brother flying in to help, or so the story goes. Adam's arrival shifts the dynamics a bit, adds another face to the mix at the property. As evening rolls in, they all sit down for dinner together. It's Rebecca, Jonah, Adam, and some friend who's there too. They're eating, talking, or maybe not talking much, given the circumstances. This meal puts them all in the same space, establishes who's wandering the halls that night. Rebecca's movements are accounted for, dropping off Zena, fetching Adam, sharing that dinner. Jonah's there, probably distracted by thoughts of his son at Rady Children's. Adam's the newcomer, settling in after his trip. And this friend? Just another piece in the puzzle of who saw what. These are the quiet interactions, the small shifts in the household right before the darkness hits. But that was just the prelude. Next, we'll rewind to the moment of the tragedy itself, on July 13th, 2011, providing a detailed slow-motion recounting of the events of that morning. We left off with that heavy night wrapping up on July 12th, everyone trying to catch some sleep amid the worry. But dawn on the 13th hit like a gut punch, pulling everything into sharp, brutal focus. It was around 6:48 that morning, July 13th, 2011, when the first 911 call came in. Someone reported a woman hanging at 1043 Ocean Boulevard, the big house by the sea. That's the shack night place, where the air always carried that salty breeze, but now it was thick with something darker. Officials later pieced it together. Adam Shackney was the one who found her. Adam, Jonah's brother, staying in the guest house out back. He stepped outside early that morning, maybe for a smoke, or just to clear his head after the chaos with Max. And there she was, Rebecca Zahau, hanging from the second-story balcony. The balcony overlooked the courtyard, ropes dangling down like some twisted decoration. She was nude, a rope tight around her neck, pulling her up against the railing. Her hands were bound behind her back, feet tied together too, like she'd been wrapped up for delivery. And there was this portion of a t-shirt stuffed in her mouth, muffling whatever final words she might have had. Adam didn't hesitate, or so the reports say. He grabbed a knife from somewhere, kitchen maybe, and cut her down. She hit the ground hard, the rope still looped around her. He probably checked for a pulse, but it was too late. Emergency crews arrived quick, sirens cutting through the quiet neighborhood. They found her there on the grass, bindings intact, that t-shirt still wedged in. The scene was stark. The balcony above, rope ends frayed, where he'd sliced through. You know how these things go, perfectly still in the early light, but screaming questions underneath. Medics did their checks, but there was no bringing her back. She was declared deceased, right there at the scene, the morning sun just starting to warm the dew. Adam stood by, maybe in shock, as the officials started noting every detail. Next, we'll dive into what happened right after, the rush of responders, first police moves, and how the family took the blow in those raw early hours. So, after that chaotic morning wrapped up, with the body taken away and the house taped off, things shifted into a different gear. The kind where officials start dotting I's and crossing T's, trying to make sense of what just went down. By the afternoon of July 13th, 2011, emergency crews had cleared out, but law enforcement stuck around. Sheriff's deputies secured the property, making sure no one wandered in or out without clearance. They set up a perimeter, yellow tape fluttering in the ocean breeze like some grim party decoration. Initial responders handed off to investigators, who began processing the scene right away. Photographers snapped pictures of every angle, the courtyard, the balcony, the ropes, documenting it all before anything got touched. Forensic techs dusted for prints, collected samples, bagged whatever might hold a clue. It was methodical work, the sort that happens behind the scenes, while the world outside starts buzzing with rumors. Meanwhile, over at the hospital, Max Shacknai's condition was hanging by a thread. The 6-year-old had been airlifted in, fighting for his life after that fall 2 days earlier. Doctors monitored him closely, but things weren't looking good. His injuries too severe, his tiny body giving out. Come July 14th, the medical examiner stepped in for the autopsy on Rebecca Zahau. It was standard procedure, done that very day to establish cause and manner of death. Back at the mansion, investigators kept at it, running more forensic tests, analyzing the layout, piecing together timelines. They combed through the house, room by room, looking for anything out of place. The sheriff's office put out an initial statement, keeping it tight-lipped. They mentioned that some autopsy records and search warrant affidavits would be sealed during the investigation. No details leaking out just yet, kept under wraps to protect the process, or so they said. And that 901 recording, treated strictly as evidence, not released to the public. Locked away, voices from that morning preserved for the case files only. You know how these things go. Clean on paper, messy in the dark. As the hours ticked by, Max's situation deteriorated further. By July 15th into July 16th, 2011, the boy succumbed to his injuries. Official pronouncements varied a bit in the reports, but the outcome was the same, another loss piling on. The house on Ocean Boulevard sat quiet now, guarded by cops, while the weight of 2 deaths settled over Coronado. Next, we'll turn to the onset of the official investigation and forensic examinations that began immediately to understand the circumstances of her death. So, after that whirlwind of first reactions we talked about last time, things started to settle into something resembling an actual investigation. You know, the kind where badges show up, tape goes up, and everyone pretends they've got it all under control. The San Diego County Sheriff's Department took the lead right away. That's how it works in these parts, especially for something this high profile. They didn't go it alone, though. The Coronado Police Department pitched in, assisting with the groundwork, sharing resources, that sort of thing. Multi-agency effort, they called it. Sounds efficient, right? But in a place like Coronado, with its manicured lawns and ocean views, nothing's ever quite as smooth as it looks. They hit the ground running. Initial assessments of the scene. Photographs snapped, measurements taken, every corner poked and prodded. Evidence collection was priority 1. Bagging items, swabbing surfaces, the whole routine to preserve whatever story the place was trying to tell. Forensic testing kicked off immediately after the body was found. No waiting around, They knew this one would draw eyes. Scene analysis followed suit, mapping out positions, tracing any disturbances, piecing together the quiet chaos of that mansion. That's when the details started emerging, the ones that make you pause over your coffee. Dr. Jonathan Lucas, the medical examiner, handled the autopsy himself. Later, he issued some clarifications that raised a few eyebrows. He documented tape-like residue on her legs, about an inch wide, sticky remnants that didn't quite fit the easy narrative. Then there were the minor scalp hemorrhages, small bleeds under the skin that suggested something more than a straightforward fall. A portion of her t-shirt was found stuffed in her mouth, like an afterthought someone forgot to explain. And blood on her inner thighs, another detail that lingered in the reports, unexplained but noted. These findings, the head hemorrhages and that tape-like residue, they were all catalogued meticulously. Some of it couldn't be entirely explained, little anomalies that tugged at the edges of the official story. But here's the thing, none of it initially clashed with the assumption of suicide. At least, that's how they spun it early on. Dr. Lucas communicated about these oddities, but he kept it measured, professional, like he was walking a tightrope. You know how these things go, clean on paper, messy in the dark. The sheriff's department coordinated with his office, sifting through the evidence, building their case step by step. Early inquiries branched out, talking to staff, checking alibis, the usual dance. But those forensic bits, they stuck with me. Tape residue, hemorrhages, blood. Each one a whisper that maybe things weren't so simple. The investigation was just getting its legs, but already the shadows were lengthening. Next, we'll look at how the big institutions, like the Sheriff's Department and the Medical Examiner's Office, shaped the story for the public, holding the reins on what got out and when. We've been digging into those early days of the investigation, piecing together what the cops and examiners found at the scenes. Now, let's shift gears to how the institutions wrapped it all up and sold it to the public. It was September 2nd, 2011, when the San Diego County Sheriff's Department stepped up to the microphones. Alongside the medical examiner, they laid it out plain and simple. Rebecca Zahau's death, suicide by hanging. And little Max's tragic fall? Just an accident, nothing more. The sheriff didn't stop there. He rolled out a full PowerPoint presentation. Slides reconstructing the whole sequence of events, step by step, like a storyboard for a bad movie. They walked everyone through it, making sure the narrative stuck. But the questions kept coming, especially from the media. So, on September 6, just a few days later, medical examiner Dr. Jonathan Lucas put out a clarifying statement. He addressed those nagging points about the autopsy, trying to smooth over any rough edges. You know how these things go. Official word comes down, and suddenly everything's tied up neat. No loose threads dangling in the wind. During the investigation, they sealed some of the autopsy records and those search warrant affidavits. Kept them under wraps, away from prying eyes. And that 911 recording, It was treated as evidence, never released to the public. No one outside the inner circle got to hear those frantic calls. Years passed, and then came that 2018 civil verdict. Shook things up a bit. The sheriff's department didn't back down, though. They reassessed the whole investigation and stood by their original conclusions. Made it crystal clear at a news conference on December 7th, 2018. The medical examiner jumped in too, doing a re-review of everything. And surprise, they reaffirmed it all. Suicide and accident. Case closed. These moves felt like containment, a way to manage the story and keep it from unraveling further. Up next, we'll dive into the lives of the key players, Rebecca Zahau and Adam Shacknai, their backgrounds, what drove them, and the ties that bound them. Now that we've unpacked how the officials and the press laid out their version from the start, it's time to step back and look at the faces behind the headlines. The people who lived this nightmare, whose lives got tangled up in ways that still spark whispers and doubts. Let's start with Rebecca Maui Zhao. She was 32 when it all ended, a woman who'd carved out a spot in a world far from her beginnings. Born in Burma, she came to the States, worked as an ophthalmic technician. Quiet job, steady. But her life shifted when she met Jonah Shacknai, the big pharma exec, the guy who owned that sprawling Coronado mansion. They weren't married, but she was his girlfriend, his partner in that loose, modern sense, living there part-time, blending into his high-end life. Friends described her as vibrant, kind, the type who'd light up a room without trying too hard. But in the public eye, after everything, she became something else. A puzzle. A victim, maybe? Or a woman caught in the wrong story. Her family saw her as devoted, spiritual, someone who'd never leave loose ends like that. That image fueled a lot of the speculation. Why would she, of all people, end up in such a mess? Motive talk swirled around her role in the household, her ties to Jonah's son, Maxfield, and the tensions that might have simmered beneath the surface. Was she the outsider, or the glue holding it together? Depends on who you ask. Then there's Adam Shacknai, Jonah's brother. He was the one who showed up at the mansion that morning, found Rebecca, and cut her down. Adam's a tugboat captain for Memphis, blue-collar guy in a family of high rollers. He'd come out to support Jonah after the boy's accident, staying on the property in a guest house. Public impression? He was the outsider too, but in a different way, rough around the edges, not the polished type like his brother. In the media, he got painted as stoic, maybe evasive, the kind of figure who doesn't fit neatly into theories. But legally, oh man, he became the bullseye. In the 2018 wrongful death civil trial, Adam was the central defendant, found liable by a jury for what happened to Rebecca. It wasn't criminal, but that verdict hit hard. Later settled out of court, like so many of these things do. You know how these things go. Justice on a technicality. Closure in a check. His role sparked endless motive chatter. Family loyalty gone wrong? A grudge? Or just bad luck being in the wrong place? Jonah Shacknai, the homeowner, father to Maxfield. He's the linchpin connecting them. Wealthy, successful, but grieving, pulling strings from afar. On the other side, Rebecca's family fought back hard. Pari Zahau, her mother, stepped up as the lead plaintiff in that civil suit, channeling raw pain into legal fire. And Mary Zahau Lohner, Rebecca's sister, became the voice for the family, speaking out, keeping the questions alive in interviews and statements. Their perspectives clashed with the Shacknais, turning personal grief into public battles over truth and blame. These figures, Rebecca, Adam, Jonah, Pari, Mary, they're not just names. They're the human threads weaving through the speculation, the lawsuits, the lingering doubts. How their backgrounds and bonds fed into theories of motive, well, that's what kept people talking long after the headlines faded. But as we'll see next, it's the odd details in the evidence that really started cracking open those alternative stories. We've spent time digging into the people tangled up in this case, their histories, and the ways those connections stirred up all sorts of debates and lawsuits. But now, let's shift our focus to the scene itself, the little details that keep nagging at you, the ones that don't line up quite so neatly with the story we're supposed to believe. It's these contradictions, these odd forensic bits, that make you wonder if there's more here than meets the eye. Start with the bindings and the gag. They were there, sure, but some experts looked at them and shook their heads, saying it didn't seem likely someone could have tied themselves up like that on their own. The knots, the positioning, it's the kind of thing that makes you pause. Was it really self-inflicted? Or does it point to something else? Then there's the tape-like residue on her legs, about an inch wide, sticky marks that didn't come from the bindings we know about. What left those? No one could say for sure, but they were there, clear as day in the reports. Adds another layer of questions, doesn't it? And the bruising, unusual patterns, including those minor scalp hemorrhages. Some suggested they could have come from contact with the balcony surfaces, maybe during a fall. But others aren't so convinced. The placement and the way they looked raised eyebrows about possible blunt force from somewhere else. You know how these things go. Official reports tie it up neatly, but the shadows whisper different stories. Don't forget the localized blood on her inner thighs. It was there, unexplained, not fitting perfectly with the rest of the scene. Was it from an injury we don't know about, or something more? The medical examiner noted it, but couldn't pin it down entirely, just said it wasn't enough to change the overall conclusion. Now, that black-painted message on the door. It was scrawled there, bold and dark, but the handwriting didn't match what you'd expect, and its very presence screamed questions about staging. Did she paint it herself? Or was someone else trying to set a scene? Investigators pondered third-party involvement, but it stayed a puzzle. And those bare footprints on the balcony floor, well preserved, like someone had walked out there without shoes, dust clinging just right. They matched her, But in a scene like this, they add to the biomechanical riddles. How did she end up positioned that way, with everything else going on? These pieces don't contradict the suicide ruling outright, according to the officials. They just leave gaps, forensic puzzles that tug at the edges of the story. Coming up, we'll dive into that official narrative, the evidence the sheriff and medical examiner put forward to back suicide, and the logic they used to make it stick. We've laid out those puzzles in the evidence, the kind that make you wonder late at night. Now let's turn to the official line, what the authorities pieced together. The San Diego County Medical Examiner wrapped it up pretty straightforward. Cause of death was hanging, and the manner? Suicide. No big twists there, at least according to them. The sheriff's department put together a reconstruction of how it all went down. They figured Rebecca Zahau grabbed some rope from the garage. Nothing fancy, just what was there. She sliced it into sections, then bound her own feet. Hands next, tied behind her back. In this setup, they said would self-tighten as she pulled. A piece of her t-shirt went into her mouth as a gag. From there, she made her way to the balcony. And then over the railing, creating what they called a long drop hanging. That's the sequence, step by quiet step. Forensics backed it up, or so they claimed. DNA and trace testing came back with mostly her own stuff. Zahau's DNA all over the place. No signs of anyone else messing around in there. The medical examiner had some clarifications on those odd marks people noticed. That blood on her thighs, they said it was from menses or IUD spotting. Nothing more sinister. Bruising came from contact with the balcony, plain as day. Tape residue was small, significance unclear, not a red flag. Scalp hemorrhages matched up with hitting the balcony edge. And the scene itself? No forensic evidence of any altercation, no struggle, no fight. Everything quiet, contained. You know how these things go. Tidy report, loose ends tucked away. Years later, in 2018, the medical examiner and sheriff did a re-review. They looked it all over again and stood by the original call. No evidence of homicide, they said. Suicide by hanging, case closed. That's the official theory, laid out in black and white. But not everyone was convinced. Next, we will dive into the alternative theories promoted by Rebecca's family and advocates that challenge the official conclusion and propose homicide and cover-up. We've heard the official story. Rebecca's death ruled a suicide, supported by all that forensic and investigative detail. But there's another side, pushed hard by her family and their legal team. One that calls it murder, plain and simple, with the scene carefully staged to look like something else. They point the finger at Adam Shacknai, Jonah's brother, who was there at the mansion that night. According to them, he orchestrated the whole thing, turning a homicide into what looked like a desperate act. Let's start with those bindings. Her hands were tied behind her back, feet bound too, and there was this gag in her mouth, a t-shirt stuffed in there. The family says no way could she have done that to herself. It's just not possible, they argue. The knot's too tight, the setup too elaborate for someone acting alone. And that t-shirt in her mouth? That's not suicide. That's someone silencing her, maybe during a struggle. Then there's the tape residue they found on her body. Advocates claim it points to restraint, like she was taped up before the ropes came into play. Why else would there be sticky marks, if not for holding her down against her will? Add to that the unexplained bruising, especially on her head. They say it looks like she took hits, blows that could have knocked her out before any hanging happened. In the civil trial, experts testified about biomechanical evidence suggesting multiple strikes to the head from an assault. That would have left her unconscious, unable to fight back or tie those knots herself. And don't forget the black-painted message on the door. Something ominous scrawled there. The family sees it as a staged prop, maybe a clue pointing to third-party involvement, or just a twisted way to throw investigators off. It doesn't read like a suicide note. It feels planted, they say. You know how these things go. A message in paint, meant to confuse more than confess. This all came to a head in the wrongful death civil trial brought by Rebecca's family. They sued Adam Shacknai, laying out these claims in court. The plaintiffs hammered on the bindings, the gag, the tape residue, the bruising, all as proof of foul play. And in 2018, the civil jury sided with them, finding Adam liable for her death. It wasn't a criminal conviction, but it was a win for the family, a validation of their push for justice. They've kept advocating, refusing to let the homicide theory fade away. So there you have it, two narratives clashing, one official, one fiercely contested. Next, we'll look at the fallout from all this, the lingering effects on the families, the investigators, and the whole community caught in the crossfire of these competing stories and courtroom battles. We've just unpacked those wild theories and the family's relentless fight, pointing fingers at foul play in Rebecca's death. But you know, cases like this don't just fade away. They linger, pulling in lawyers, courts, and a whole mess of public scrutiny. That's where we land now, in the fallout and aftermath, with legal battles stretching out like shadows in a dimly lit alley. It started back in 2013, when Rebecca Zahau's family filed a civil wrongful death lawsuit against Adam Shacknai. That litigation dragged on through 2017, a slow grind of discovery, bringing in experts, digging through evidence, bit by bit. Depositions piled up, arguments flew back and forth, the kind of courtroom chess that wears everyone down. Then, in April 2018, a civil jury delivered their verdict. They found Adam Shacknai liable, hitting him with over $5 million in damages to Zahau's family. It was a win on paper, but wins like that come with strings attached. Right after that verdict, the San Diego sheriff ordered a reassessment of the original Coronado investigation. They took another look, maybe hoping to quiet the noise, or perhaps just covering bases. But by early 2019, things shifted again. An undisclosed settlement cropped up between Zahau's family and Adam Shacknai's insurance carrier. With that, the civil judgment got vacated and dismissed, with prejudice gone like it never happened. You know how these things go. Clean on paper, messy in the dark. The family wasn't done, though. From 2020 to 2022, they pushed public records litigation under the California Public Records Act. They wanted those investigative files and exhibits released, but faced pushback, exemptions, court motions, the usual roadblocks. It was a tug of war, with officials holding tight to whatever they deemed off-limits. Then, in October 2022, Zahau family attorneys petitioned the medical examiner. They asked to change the manner of death from suicide to homicide, or undetermined, a last-ditch effort to rewrite the official story. But in September 2023, the ME responded firm as ever. The manner of death stays suicide, they said. No changes, no budging. All the while, this case keeps bubbling up in true crime podcasts, online forums, and media spots. It draws in armchair detectives, sustains debates that never quite die down. Institutions pull one way, the public another, a endless back and forth that leaves everyone questioning. And through it all, the personal toll lingers on families fractured and lives upended. Professional reputations hang in the balance, with every new headline stirring the pot. It's the kind of aftermath that doesn't wrap up neatly, just keeps unraveling. Next, we'll zero in on the lingering questions, those secrets and missing pieces that keep the uncertainty alive. We've sifted through the fallout, the lawsuits, the scrutiny, the endless back and forth. But here's what keeps me up at night. It's not what we know, it's all the pieces still locked away. You start digging into a case like this, and you hit walls, solid ones. Take the full autopsy packet, for instance. We're talking the whole thing, with all the attachments. It's out there somewhere, but not in public view. And without it, we're left guessing at details that could shift everything. Then there are the unredacted search warrant affidavits. These are the documents that spell out why investigators went where they did, what they were looking for. But they're sealed up tight, blacked out in spots that matter. You have to wonder, what's hiding behind those lines? Don't get me started on the full lab reports and chain of custody logs. These track every sample, every test, every hand that touched the evidence. They haven't been released to the public, not fully. And in a case built on forensics, that's a gap you can't ignore. What about the original 911 audio? That's still under seal. The call that kicked off the whole response. Words spoken in panic, maybe clues in the tone or background noise. We don't have it. Officials say it's for privacy or whatever, but it leaves a hole right in the timeline. And let's not forget the civil trial transcripts and exhibits. Some of those are still inaccessible to folks like you and me. Testimonies, documents presented in court. They could hold answers, but they're gathering dust behind closed doors. These aren't just loose ends. They're the core of why people keep pushing for more. Public records requests pile up, one after another. Advocates, journalists, even some inside the system, they're demanding these materials, arguing their high value for any fresh look at the case. Calls for re-review from the public, and prosecutors highlight these exact gaps. It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. You know how these things go. Promises of transparency, but the shadows always win out. Institutional opacity, that's the polite term. But in a dimly lit bar like this, we'd call it something else, hiding in plain sight. Without these artifacts, the questions linger. Was everything handled right? Did we miss something crucial? It's fuel for the fire, keeping the debate alive years later. People want closure, but these unknowns make it impossible. Ongoing requests chip away, but progress is slow, and in the meantime, the mysteries stack up. That's the reality of cases like this. The truth isn't always buried. Sometimes it's just sealed away. So, as we wrap this up, it all circles back to what we can say for sure. In our final segment, we'll tackle the central question head-on, reflecting on all the evidence and perspectives to weigh what remains confirmed and what shadows remain. We've been chasing those shadows for a while now, the ones that keep pulling at the edges of this story. And here we are, at the end of the line, staring down the central question that's haunted this case from day one. Does all the evidence, the official investigations, really lock in suicide as the only answer? Or do those nagging contradictions open the door just enough for something darker, like homicide? Let's lay it out, plain and simple, without the spin. The medical examiner and the sheriff's department have stuck to their guns on this. They've reaffirmed the suicide conclusion over and over. After the civil trial, during those 2018 reviews, every time someone poked at it. Official word is clear. It's suicide. Case closed. But then there's the other side, the courtroom drama that shook things up. In the civil litigation, a jury found Adam Shacknai liable, pointed the finger right at him for wrongdoing. That verdict hit hard, suggested there was more to it than the official story. Of course, it got vacated later, after a settlement smoothed things over. Poof, gone, just like that. You know how these things go, justice on the rocks with a twist of cash. Still, even with that back and forth, persistent contradictions keep bubbling up. Anomalies in the details, things that don't quite line up, fueling all sorts of alternative theories. Public debate rages on, people picking sides, dissecting every angle. And let's not forget the sealed evidence, key pieces tucked away or just plain missing. That alone sustains the uncertainty, keeps the questions alive in the dark. This isn't some forgotten file gathering dust. The case pops up in true crime media again and again, over more than a decade now. Podcasts, documentaries, books, enduring public scrutiny that just won't quit. Family advocates on one side, institutional voices on the other, locked in this ongoing dispute. Opposing interpretations clash, ensuring Rebecca Zahau's death doesn't rest quietly. So, where does that leave us? It's complicated, isn't it? The official line holds strong, but those cracks let in just enough doubt to keep the fascination burning. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. That's on you, listener. Think it through, weigh the pieces, see what sticks. In the end, some stories don't wrap up neat. They linger, like smoke in a dimly lit room.